I remember during the build-up to Dead by Daylight's 5th anniversary, conversations were abound about what new licenses we would be getting in the next year. And the one that was most anticipated was Resident Evil. Resident Evil is famous for its all-star cast of amazing characters, and arguably even more famous for its iconic monsters. And there was no better pick for Dead by Daylight than Nemesis. See, Nemesis is a special type of enemy in Resident Evil known as a stalker or a pursuer. He ruthlessly attacks and stalks you throughout the entirety of Resident Evil 3. He is specially designed to keep you on edge, as you know that he's always on the hunt and can appear at any point. And yeah, I know I'm using footage from the Resident Evil 3 remake where he's mostly a cutscene character and isn't actually always on the hunt, but we're not going to talk about that. This was a perfect fit for Dead by Daylight. A pursuer, a constant threat, someone who can single-handedly take out multiple victims. And when we finally got him in Dead by Daylight, he fucking sucked. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're all enjoying the new 2v8 mode, and I hope you're ready to hear another one of my unscripted rambles about one of Dead by Daylight's most disappointing chapters. I'm not exactly sure if that's a hot take, but it's something I genuinely believe. I know for a fact fans were clamoring for a Resident Evil chapter, and we got pretty much everything we wanted. But unfortunately, I honestly can't imagine many people stuck around after the release of this chapter. I mean, yeah, we've known for years that Nemesis is a wet, sad creature, but I genuinely don't see people picking apart the problems with this chapter, so people on the outside of the DBD community won't really understand what's wrong with him. So consider this video sort of a buyer beware. Today I'm going to be dissecting how Dead by Daylight's developers fumbled one of the biggest names in gaming. So let's do a quick rundown of his power. Nemesis has access to a unique tentacle strike ability, and right off the bat I can already tell you this is the only thing he has going for him. It's very quick to pull out and its hitbox comes out almost immediately, which makes it better than the basic attack in most situations. The hitbox of the attack is also very forgiving. It'll linger for a long time, and you can move around while the hitbox is active, which will actually drag the hitbox around as you move. Colliding with obstacles won't stop you either. The hitbox just keeps going even if you bump into something first. These mechanics are core to Nemi's gameplay loop, as dragging the hitbox around makes it so you can hit survivors around obstacles faster than they would expect. To, quote-unquote, balance this out, the survivors are given an extra protective health state in the form of contamination. Survivors won't take any damage from Tentacle Strike unless they're contaminated first. Survivors can also find 4 supply cases littered around the map that they can search to find a vaccine, which cures their contamination. Once it's used, you'll also see their location briefly. You also get 2 emotional support zombies to back you up, which are, you know, nice. And listen, I know this kit already sounds incredible, but don't worry, it gets better. By hitting survivors and zombies with your Tentacle Strike, you'll level up your mutation rate. At mutation rate level 2, you can break pallets with Tentacle Strike, and at mutation rate 3, your Tentacle Strike's range is increased. And that's basically everything. It's a very simple concept, but really overcomplicated when I have to describe everything. And I think that's kind of the best way I can describe Nemesis in general. Too simple and too overcomplicated, both at the same time. His kit just has too much fluff that doesn't feel like it adds anything, it's just there. And that's kind of where the problems begin, starting with the third hit problem. You want to know how to make someone feel like they're playing as a tyrant with extreme strength, forcing them to hit survivors an extra time just to down them. This is frankly one of the most absurd power mechanics in the game. As I said before, the tentacle is better than the basic attack in most situations, but it's not like that much better. All this mechanic does is encourage Nemi players to tunnel off hook and avoid people they haven't yet infected. It also makes him much more susceptible to body block plays, which are already pretty strong against most killers, but having an extra health state against his power makes it so you're pretty safe in most situations. It's not like his tentacle can hit around people either, so he doesn't have many options to deal with people getting in his way. Balance-wise, it doesn't make sense because the strength of the tentacle is not that overbearing that it requires an extra hit. And thematically it doesn't make sense because why wouldn't the tentacle injure the survivor on impact? To be fair, Nemesis does do a lot of no-damage attacks during Resident Evil 3, but that's because he's grabbing and throwing Jill around with the tentacle, not just slapping her with it like he does in DBD. The only reasonable explanation I can see for why this no damage mechanic is in the game is because of the zombies. Since you can't really control what the zombies do, they can kind of just end up being RNG damage or free hits, and I think they wanted to counterbalance that by giving you an extra hit to protect you from them as well. And if that's the case, then that means Nemi's power is being bottlenecked by zombies, which is our next problem. I genuinely don't know how Capcom and Behavior thought this would be a good idea. You cannot balance around RNG. Not when it's this polarizing. Zombies can be a genuine nuisance when they just stand around gens and don't leave, or body block tiles that you're trying to run and chase and just down you randomly. But they also have an equal chance to just waddle around the map doing nothing. The AI can't tell the zombies where they should be and where they shouldn't. It's not programmed to do such a thing. So most of the time they just walk around wherever they can, even if there's nobody nearby. You can kill them for a chance that they might respawn somewhere more useful, but again, that's more RNG. They could just spawn somewhere useless again. And hey, you know what? Great idea. Great idea. Go kill that zombie that's on the other side of the fucking map doing nothing. Go run to the other side of the map, punch that zombie just for a chance of it being useful. Do you see the problem now? Do you see why you can't balance around RNG like this? I called Dredge the most luck-reliant killer in my last video's thumbnail, but Nemi? Oh my god, he is an embarrassment. And speaking of my last video, I want to give a quick thank you. Because of all the support on my last two videos, I actually managed to reach 1,000 subscribers and become a YouTube partner. I'm currently stuck at home right now, so I'm just making these videos to pass the time since I can't work. So it's really nice to actually be able to monetize my little hobby. And there's never going to be any pressure to do a super thanks or a donation or anything. I just really appreciate the opportunity, so thank you. Anyway, back to this Chungus killer. The next thing I want to talk about is his unnecessary limitations. Think back to earlier when I mentioned the contamination mechanic. All it does is protect survivors from your tentacle and your zombies. It doesn't work to your benefit at all. Unlike other killers with infection-based powers, the infection doesn't worsen or progress or hinder the survivors at all. It only protects them from your power if they're not infected. That being said, there's no real reason not to be infected. Survivors can use the contamination to their benefit by preventing you from leveling up your mutation rate. When Nemesis contaminates a survivor, he actually gets 3 times the mutation rate that he does for just hitting a zombie or an infected survivor. So if you're one of the first people to be chased and you happen to see a zombie, you might as well just run into it, get a free speed boost, and also prevent Nemesis from leveling up his power. Cause remember, his tentacle isn't that much better than his basic attack. The main benefit is that pallet break and the extra range he gets from mutation rate. And if you prevent him from getting that early on, he might as well just be an M1 killer with zombies. And we already went over how amazing those are. And with such a lackluster base kit, you'd think maybe his add-ons would help alleviate the situation, but Nemi has absolutely nothing in that department. In the last 2 videos, I didn't talk about the killer's add-ons until the last part where I was doing all the reworks, but this is one of those cases where the lack of add-ons doesn't make sense and just detracts from the character as a whole. Looking at Nemi's add-ons, you'd think his zombies are his primary power, because 11 of them are dedicated to the zombies, either by buffing their respawn time, their speed, their detection, or by giving you an effect when you kill them. And I would say out of all 11, like, 1 of them is good. And besides those, there's also like 6 add-ons dedicated to the supply cases and vaccines. And, like, who cares? People aren't really going to be reaching for those vaccines all the time, and even if they do, they're going to be out of range from you. So applying effects to people who aren't even anywhere near you doesn't help you at all. I would say generally the best add-ons are going to be the ones that let you get your mutation rate faster, but then once you max out your mutation rate, you just don't have an add-on anymore, and that's really boring. Nemesis doesn't really have any add-ons that apply effects when he hits survivors with his tentacle strike, and one of the few that he does have is extremely useless, that being Liquor Tongue. Liquor Tongue increases the duration of the hindered penalty survivors get when you contaminate them with your tentacle strike. And you might be asking yourself now, wait, survivors get hindered when they get contaminated by the tentacle? And the answer to that question might as well be no, because the duration of that hindered effect is so short that it's basically negligible. And spoiler alert, this add-on doesn't help in that regard. It's still so negligible that it doesn't matter. So his add-ons are useless, but what about his teachables? Well, we've got Hysteria, useless. Lethal Pursuer, boring. Eruption, don't remind me. I think I aged about 20 years just from that perk's existence. But I'm actually going to elaborate a bit more on his perk situation because it's pretty unique amongst the killer roster. Nemesis doesn't really have the tools to take advantage of most perks in the game. He lacks mobility and he lacks snowball potential, so stuff like Ruin, Aura Reading, Infectious Fright, Ultimate Weapon, not really great picks on him. And this would be the part where I say Nemesis is bottlenecked into running slowdown. But since most slowdowns require you to get downs or hooks, he can't really take advantage of those since he takes too long to do both of those things. He's actually mostly reliant on chase perks like Bamboozle and Coup de Grace, because those will actually help him secure a down to be able to use a slowdown like Pain Res. And like most killers, his best perk is Corrupt Intervention, and especially so in his case because his early game is really bad. So just a recap of everything we discussed. We have Infection mechanic that doesn't help you, zombies that are RNG reliant, Tentacle that's barely better than the basic attack, Mutation rate gimmick that handicaps your early game, add-ons that don't help you, add-ons that run out of uses, add-ons that are RNG reliant, add-ons that only help you in the early game, and a very lackluster selection of perks that actually affect your power in any meaningful way. At this point, I'm convinced you have to be a genuine psychopath to enjoy this character.
Oh, fucking what? Oh my...
And that just makes me wonder why. Why is he like this? Why does he feel so half-baked? And a little over a year later, we'd get our answer. Now, I know it might be controversial to imply that one of the most popular and beloved chapters we've ever seen may have come with some negative consequences, but hear me out. When you're working on a live service game, development time isn't infinite. You have to divide your resources amongst different projects simultaneously. Contrary to what you might believe, behavior isn't just starting a new killer and releasing them every 3 months. These killers are made and concepted long in advance. Point being, Wesker and Nemesis were likely developed around the same time. So when I said Nemesis was half-baked, I literally meant he was one half, and Wesker was the other half. Nemesis was obviously the one we got first, and we got Wesker later on after he had more time in the oven. This could also explain why we later got a skin for William Birkin. He may have also been a candidate to be his own killer. And the point I'm trying to make is that many concepts were likely thrown around at the time that were just divided amongst Nemesis and Wesker. And since Wesker released later on, he got more polish and care as a result, although the amount of polish he got is up for debate. So let's quickly dissect where Nemesis and Wesker are similar and where they end up being different. Both killers cause an infection when they hit survivors with their powers, but while Nemesis doesn't really do much of anything, Wesker's will actually cause survivors to become hindered, which actually encourages them to get rid of the infection. Both killers' powers can potentially end up not doing damage, but while Nemesis is forced to infect a survivor first, which doesn't do damage, Wesker can infect a survivor and damage them at the same time. Nemesis needs to level up his power to unlock core abilities that he needs to end chases. Meanwhile, Wesker gets his full power from the get-go. In the official trailer for Nemesis, we can see him grab Meg with his tentacle and throw her into a car. And what do we see Wesker do in DBD? Oh, better lawyer up, Albert. And what may be the most important thing when it comes to player retention, Wesker has a ton of interesting mechanics that allow for unique skill expression, and Nemesis has this. And I think that's about all I have to say about Wesker. So, what can we do about Nemesis? Can we really improve on his existing kit? Honestly, that's a hard question for me to answer. At the end of the day, you can change this kit all you want. This doesn't feel like Nemesis. Nemesis in RE3 felt like a supervillain. This version of Nemesis not only feels derivative, he feels underpowered. And if you even try to change this power, someone is going to have to sacrifice something. If you want to make Nemesis stronger, you're just going to make him less fun to play against for Survivor. And if you try to make one of those compensation nerfs to counteract any buffs he gets, you're just removing the appeal of playing Nemesis. What I think Nemesis deserved was a different power on release. He needed more time in the oven. So that's what this concept is. Let me introduce to you my Nemesis Rework. What I felt like Nemesis was lacking in DBD was options. Pretty much all he has is his tentacle. The zombies are unreliable, and they don't really feel like your power. They feel like something that's just there. What he also needed was a more simple power. Because like I said, his kit is full of fluff that doesn't add anything, like mutation rate and contamination. So I trimmed the fat from his kit and rebuilt it from the ground up with 2 new, simple abilities, Tentacle Whip and Rushdown. And you're probably wondering about the Tentacle Whip now. Is it just a rename of Tentacle Strike? Well, no. What I wanted with Tentacle Whip was to have it feel more like how it was shown in the trailer, with him grabbing Meg and throwing her into a car. I also wanted him to more closely resemble the actual game he's coming from, where he pulls Jill towards him with his tentacle and is very often seen throwing her around. And as you can imagine, I had to get rid of the tentacle third hit because nobody liked it, and I also got rid of the mutation rate, so this is just going to be one consistent power throughout the whole game. And with that out the way, let me actually describe the rework to you now. The new power is called Tyrant Fury. Press the active ability button to switch between Tentacle Whip, a medium range attack used to grapple survivors, and Rushdown, a sprinting mode that allows you to unleash an attack which damages survivors and destroys obstacles. Special attack, Tentacle Whip. Press and hold the power button to charge an attack, then tap the attack button to unleash Tentacle Whip. Hitting a survivor will cause them to be grabbed and pulled towards the Nemesis, afflicting them with the T-virus or progressing their infection. Once grabbed, you then have a brief moment to aim and throw the survivor. If a survivor collides with an obstacle, they'll lose a health state. If they're thrown into another survivor, that survivor will also lose a health state. Slamming a survivor into a drop pallet or breakable wall will cause the obstacle to be destroyed. If a survivor is performing an action, such as vaulting, unhooking, or has the endurance status effect, they will instead be hit with Tentacle Strike, which causes them to immediately lose a health state without being interrupted. Special ability, Rushdown. Press and hold the power button to charge Rushdown. While active, you sprint at increased speed with reduced turning for a limited time. While sprinting, you can attack, which grants increased turning and the ability to damage survivors. Colliding with a pallet or breakable wall using the attack will cause you to destroy the obstacle. Colliding with a vault at any point during Rushdown will cause you to vault the obstacle with increased speed, and hit any survivor who is too close to the other side. Ending Rushdown by any means puts the ability on a lengthy cooldown. Special Affliction, T-virus. Survivors infected with the T-virus will slowly deteriorate over time, becoming more susceptible to your tentacle and Rushdown attacks. 5 supply cases will spawn throughout the map. When opened, the survivor has a choice to retrieve a vaccine and a grenade. Both cannot be held simultaneously. Vaccines can be used to cure T-virus infection on oneself or a teammate, while grenades can be dropped while running to stun the Nemesis after a short delay, or dropped when grabbed by the Tentacle Whip by succeeding a difficult skill check, which will free you from the Nemesis's grasp. You might think the grenades sound a little bit absurd. They pretty much hard counter the Nemesis entirely, right? Well, they're there to counterbalance just how strong his ability actually is. In close range, his Tentacle Whip would be extremely oppressive, being able to pull you back into him and then slam you into obstacles. And if it doesn't damage you outright, he can just throw you into a dead zone and then you're just gonna die either way. And if he's at a longer range, he can catch right back up to you with his Rushdown, which plays kind of like a short duration Oni dash. So since Nemesis was so intimidating of a threat, I wanted you to be able to fight back using grenades. Grenades pretty much completely destroyed Nemesis in Resident Evil 3 Remake, so I thought having them as part of the kit would be kind of a cool callback. And don't worry, Nemesis also has a bit of options against the grenades as well. When Nemesis is stunned by a grenade, all of his powers immediately recharge and he cannot be stunned by a grenade for another 10 seconds. Survivors who stay too close to the blast zone will stun themselves. Survivors hit by a basic attack or rushdown attack will drop these items. And that wraps up his base kit in my rework. I know this is very different from what we have in the game right now, but I think his abilities would more closely resemble what he actually does in Resident Evil, and feel more like you're playing as the Nemesis. And I don't see this as a realistic example of how they could rework a Nemesis. This is just my dream version of Nemesis that I would have had him release with. I don't want to take up too much of your time with this segment and this video, so if you want to know more of the specifics of this rework, then you can go into the description or the pinned comment and there will be a link to the Nemesis Rework document, which details specific statistics, add-ons, stuff like that. While you're in the description, I would also appreciate it if you liked the video and subscribed if you wanted to see more. I want to do more case studies like these in the future because they're really fun to make and they get conversations going about balance. Additionally, I just want to make other types of videos in the future as well, whether that be fun gameplay videos like the MFT one I made, or other discussion type videos not necessarily focused on killer balance. I have a lot of ideas right now and a lot of projects I'm working on, so I'll have a variety of content up in the future. But if you want to see more from me, you'll have to subscribe. And if you have any suggestions for me, please leave a comment. I would love to keep working on new stuff for you guys. If you want to see more stuff from me in the meantime, feel free to follow me on Twitter or join my Discord, where I plan to post clips of what I'm working on and screenshots and teasers of new videos. And that's it. See ya!